invest in the right things, especially in triathlon. I mean, I totally respect running, cycling, as well as swimming as three sports. But if you combine all three of them again, it's quite an expensive affair, right? You have to be, cautious as to where you invest your money on for those early gains. Because right now, even now, I mean, I work with a lot of athletes. A lot of them ask me as well, hey, should I buy these XYZ carbon or disc wheels, or should I just get off a, carbon bike? Tell them, I mean, you have to learn the sport and then you invest it. Right up front, if you're going for the most expensive item, it won't make you better, right? But maybe if you invest in a good program and a good coach and focus on your strength, your technique, that you get those many benefits. Patience, right? I think that's a very important thing, and I think, I mean, I cannot talk about anyone else, but in my own experience, there were a lot of triathletes back then from India and my own circle in Singapore who started out with me. I mean, at least 60 to 70% of them have dropped out of the sport now. And it's not that they were not doing great. I mean, many of them were doing great, but the way they just ramped up, within 1 year, just do a sprint, next, 2 months Olympic, and then we'll do 370 points, these are full, and then I'm going to do X, Y, Z. They just burned out, and then, they just lose interest in the sport. So you have to be patient, learn it, respect it, and then, keep progressing. Whenever you do focus on that aspect, I mean, I'm sure that everyone's as committed to the professional life as triathlon as a hobby. So focus on each aspect, and whatever you're doing, be in the moment for that. If you're doing a say a session, be in the moment for the session. Don't think about what's going to happen at work later. When you're in work, don't get distracted. Do work, right? Second part is patience, right? Be patient. Speed will come, endurance will come. You just need to be patient and keep working on the basics. And of course, the third part is, when you're out there to race, I mean, all of us are, I mean, to be honest, doing training to actually race, right? So what's the point if you're out for a race and you don't enjoy it, right? So really, enjoy it, whether you're out there to compete or complete, enjoy it so that, you live the experience.
I am Vaiki Venki, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is a triathlete from India who is currently working and racing in Singapore. He's one of the fastest triathletes not just in India but also in Singapore. He consistently finishes at the top of the amateur group field and has multiple podiums to his name. He has also qualified for the Ironman 70.3 World Championships. He is affiliated with a few Singapore-based triathlon clubs to conduct training sessions and is now foraying into the space of triathlon clinics for amateurs looking to step up their game. His name is Arjun Kandikuppa. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Arjun. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Let's start by talking about what your typical workday looks like.
Okay, excellent question. Thanks for that. I mean, great to be on the show again. So, typical workday at my end starts at around 9:30 to 10. I mean, that's when typically I start logging in and checking with my office emails, and of course we're in a mobile age, and I do work for a social media company. So, even if I'm logged out of work, I'm actually logged into work. Even if I'm logging into any of these social media products, so work never really stops for me. So yeah, checking from emails, and then I mean, this whole cycle of calls and all gets started. And by the time I'm done with my first set of work, typically it's around 5:36 in the evening. And then more often than not, I go out for some, daddy duties with my daughter. I think that's my favorite part of the day, where we spend some time together in the evening. I typically take her out to playgrounds and all. So she really likes playing with me. And then again, after dinner, I again log back in for an hour or so in the night. So that's how typically my work day looks like. So pretty much stretched Monday to Fridays, but then the good part is that Saturdays and Sundays I've really got off time. I really don't log into work on Saturdays and Sundays. So that's my work day at the moment.
Nice. But coming to sports, right? Were you always into sports from childhood? How did it look back in the day?
Yeah, so great question. I think one of the fortunate things in my life was my father was from the defense services. So, I mean, early on from childhood, we had access to a lot of physical infrastructure, which I would like to refer as, which is usually quite difficult to otherwise gain access to. So we had like continuous access to football fields, cricket grounds, swimming clubs, and all. So yeah, since childhood, I mean, we were into a lot of sports. Me and my brother playing in the army cantonments or even outside. And then slowly, as we started going to schools, we started into various school activities like football teams and basketball teams. So it was quite an active affair all the way till I think the 10th standard. That's when life hits hard, and then that's when parents really don't want you to pursue any other sort of sports. So it came to a standstill a bit over there. Then again, after moving to college, the freedom again came back, staying in hostels. So I think that's where really I developed a more keen interest in basketball. So I was a varsity player for around 4 years, based in Rajasthan. So that was quite a good place. But then again, the next hurdle comes in life when you really step into the corporate life. That's when the crazy hours and all start. And then somewhere down the line, I think 2000, I think 10, 11, I really realized that I was ignoring my fitness, and then that was the same time I was pursuing my post graduation as well. So figure out a good balance in life over there. Really going to the gym and doing some regular physical activities. But only after I started my regular corporate life, when I started getting all this salary and all, and you're a bachelor, you get into all of these other social activities, and that's when I realized it's getting unfit and it's not sustainable. So I started doing some sort of running. I mean, I was not doing running all the way during my post graduation and initial days of my career in 2012. So 13, I was lucky, based in Bangalore, one of the best campuses in Infosys. So great exposure over there, good running community in Bangalore. So good friends. I used to go out in the mornings. I see a lot of people running, and I was like, okay, it can't be so difficult, right? And that's when I started running. And slowly 5Ks turned to 10Ks. And then before I know, 10Ks turned to 21Ks. And then again, after that, once I moved out of India, I moved out of here to Singapore for work. I think it was still running, but then I got exposure to a whole lot of like cycling and all. I did cycling as a kid, but never competitively. But then I think 2015 is when I really started, going into triathlons. So I think that's where my actual journey began from 2016, but I never really got serious about it till I think 2018, 19. That's when I really
Wow.
got serious about it as a sport.
Okay. Okay. Nice. So from a bit of basketball in college, then running kind of uh, gave you a second wind into sports once you started working. Right. So when was this move to Singapore happen?
Coincide around like 2014 or something, and then again, I mean, once you're, I mean, again, trying to set up work and get fluent in the work. I think that's again took top priorities. But then 2 years
Right.
down the line, figured out balance as to how to really get about it, and then really started enjoying. I was still doing running, but then I started, looking at a lot of people cycling and all. Took up cycling, and then I think Singapore being a place next to the sea and all, there were quite a lot of triathlons happening. I never understood the sport. But then I started talking to people, looked up at clubs and all. And then I figured out that, I knew swimming as a kid. So probably it won't be so difficult, start swimming again. But that's when I jumped into the pool and realized it was taking me more than like 3 minutes to swim 100 meters. I'm like, okay, this is a totally different thing after almost like 15 years of my life trying to swim again. Cycling, I went back naturally to cycling. It was not much of a transition. But yeah, swimming was what took me some time, and then I worked with a few, setups over here to really improve my swim. And then I think 2016 was when I, really did my first triathlon over here. Really dead last, I mean, out of the swim, I was like fine, and then people were just overtaking me on the cycle, and then run, of course, don't ask. It was just a 5 kilometers run, but I was so gassed out. I still remember the photos, very weird looking.
Yeah. So what try was it? Obviously short distance. Was it Olympic?
Yeah, it was a local sprint distance, right? Sprint distance. I mean, just just a 750-meter sea swim, and then I think it was a 18-kilometer bike, and then a 5-kilometer run. But yeah, that was enough. And then I think that first race was enough. Really got hooked into it, and I think some of the aspect of that, I think the physical challenge was one. But then really looking at these, toned people, really ripped, that's like running like crazy. I'm like, oh god, this has got to be like something, extra. And then without thinking, I think I did that first one in the month of August. And then without thinking, I signed up for Olympic one in October. And then I think I just started preparing again. And then I went in for the October one. Was still like, I mean, almost dead last. But at least I enjoyed the experience. And then that's when I decided, okay, fine, let's pursue this properly for 1 year and see. So that's when I started, dabbling into it, but then nothing serious before 2018. And it was still a relatively new sport, even in Singapore. I know even in India, it was a new sport at that time. But I
Right.
think even here as well, it was new, mostly
Mm.
local races and all. And then
Right.
I think that's when slowly the transition happened.
Yeah. So those initial years in any sport are filled with a lot of learnings, right? What are some of the
Yes.
things that you learned during those couple of years in the sport?
Yeah, excellent question. So I think, I mean, the few things that I really remember, right? I think the early one was learning from my mistakes, right? So I have to speak like really about triathlon because I consider myself better at that. So I really won't speak, as an expert in each discipline, right? But in triathlon, it's like a combination of three sports, right? So
Right.
what one fails to understand when they start out is that you need to respect and understand how all of them come together, right? You can be a good runner, you can be a good cyclist, but if you put three of them together, you're bound to really interact with some sort of injuries or some sort of challenges, right? And that's when I learned early on. I started cycling. I really didn't understand what technique was in cycling, right? I got an ITB shoe, and then that was like the end of running for me for some time. And then I started swimming like crazy. I started like going for around like 10 to 11 kilometers a week of swimming, and then I got like shoulder issues. And then that's when I really stepped back and said this is not the right way to do it. So my biggest learning was learn from the knowledge of others, especially people who are doing well in the field, and especially understand from coaches. I mean, social media is one thing. You can Google up there like tons of plans that will come up, but until you
Right.
don't interact with the person, I think that doesn't come naturally. The second thing that I really learned early on was invest in the right things, especially in triathlon. I mean, I totally respect running, cycling, as well as swimming as three sports. But if you combine all three of them again, it's quite an expensive affair, right? You have to be cautious as to where you invest your money on for those early gains. Because right now, even now, I mean, I work with a lot of athletes. I and a lot of them ask me as well, hey, should I buy these XYZ carbon or disc wheels, or should I just get off a carbon bike? Tell them, I mean, you have to like learn the sport and then you invest it. Right up front, if you're going for the most expensive item, it won't make you better, right? But maybe if you invest in a good program and a good coach and focus on your strength, your technique, that will get those many benefits. And the third one, of course, was I think patience, right? I think that's a very important thing. And I think, I mean, I cannot again talk about anyone else, but in my own experience, there were a lot of triathletes back then from India and my own circle in Singapore who started out with me. I mean, at least 60 to 70% of them have dropped out of the sport now. And it's not that they were not doing great. I mean, many of them were doing great, but the way they just ramped up, within 1 year, just do a sprint, next, 2 months Olympic, and then we'll do like 370 points, these are full, and then I'm going to do X, Y, Z. They just burned out, and then, they just lose interest in the sport. So you have to be patient, learn it, respect it, and then, keep progressing. So these are three things on which I really built my foundation. Started learning more about the sport, being patient and balancing it with my life, because this is something I want to do for the next 20 years, not just for the next 2 years and close it.
Absolutely. The sustainability is really key, right? So can you expand a little bit on that aspect? How can people with such a demanding sport as triathlon keep things sustainable, both at considering the demands at work as well as the demands of multiple sports, right?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, so to answer that question, Venki, I think, I mean, most people, to be honest, are like working people, right? So one thing that you need to prioritize and understand early on is like, what is your level of, investment and gains that you want to have as a triathlete, right?
Right.
If you want to be the best age grouper, you definitely have to be cognizant that you have to sacrifice a bit here and there, right? But if you understand that I just want to complete it, then that's a totally different ball game over there, right? So a couple of things, I always keep in mind and encourage folks is, from a demand perspective, you really need to look at the amount of training that you need to put in, right? So each discipline has different amounts of training, and depending on where you want to land, whether you want to excel or whether you want to complete or whether you just want to show up, they like different degrees of training that you need to understand. And the second part over here is forming that entire narrative around a work-life balance, right? And that is very important. I mean, I personally have a kid, I got a full-time job, and I respect both of those a lot. right? I mean, ultimately, I mean, my job as a father is to, give the best for my daughter, right? And if I am out
Right.
there training or racing 15 hours a week, I'm not doing justice to my family or to my work, right? I mean, in someone else's perspective, that might be totally different, but then it's a game of, give and take. And at the end
Right.
of the day, when I come back, I want to have enough energy, so that when I get up in the evening, I can go and play with my daughter and, not just be lying around. So that's something that everyone has to balance out. You have to just train, the amount that, your body is really built for. If you go any more, you're stretching yourself and you're bound to fall sick. And that's a big component that everyone has to understand. The third one is to have like really attainable goals, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, if XYZ person, or even if in your own group, someone is attempting a longer distance, right? It's fine. You need to ask the question like, what am I content with, and what will my body be happy with, right? You don't want to, finish a super long event and then end up with cramps or pains here and there. If you're that kind of person, it's totally fine. But as a working athlete, right? I mean, do I want that? Do I want to come back to office and be sick for the next 7 days? I mean, I don't think so, right? So I mean,
Right.
the kind of athletes that I work with, and in my circle, I've got a few clubs here, that I'm part of. I always advocate, set up goals and then work towards them sustainably. And sustainable means long term, right? Don't just scale up so rapidly that you're affecting your entire, family as well as work, right? Set up goals, and then of course, I mean, if you want like win age groups, it's a totally different game.
Right.
And that will come with time, right? So
Right.
that is something that, I mean, it will only come with time, but people have to be open to that advice. Right?
Right.
There are people who are open, but then there's a faction of people, who really just want to go out there and do everything.
Right.
So I think it's a personal choice, but you need to like talk to people and understand what your
Right.
body can do versus what really you want to achieve.
Right. That is very important, right? Another thing that interesting that you that I'm really curious about, right, is the injuries, which are really part and parcel of most of the athletes lives. So you mentioned you had ITB injury that kind of put you off running and stuff like that, right, initially. So how do you deal with injuries? What are the things that uh, you would do to prevent those injuries, and also once you have those injuries, how do you kind of deal with them?
A great question. So I think the first part around injury, I think they're always caused by lack of knowledge. Either lack of knowledge on your part, you're doing something wrong, or the technique is just not right, or the person who you are training with, has not really deep dived into what your strengths or weaknesses are, right? So I mean, the kind of injuries that I've had, I think they were quite common, and it was all my mistake because I started running like too fast, too hard, too soon. I mean, I really didn't respect that my body was not the same it was when I was playing basketball in university in 2007. That time I could just get up, run in the morning, run in the evening, play, come back, sleep, nothing would happen. But now that's not the case, right? So I mean, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand, how strong the glutes have to be. I didn't understand anything about like shins or calf muscles. I was just running, right? So one thing that immediately I learned over there was gain as much knowledge as you can. I started going to a couple of physios, gain knowledge. I put in a proper strength regimen, which is totally different from a bodybuilding sort of regimen, right? There are two different aspects. People should not really confuse it, right? I focused on really a strength regimen, and triathlon is a sport which really uses all the parts of your body, right? I mean, you just cannot work on your lower body and forget, that upper body is going to be fantastic. No, you need that upper body strength in your back, in your deltoids to really go swim. You need your shoulder meniscus to be like flexible. So, I mean, that was a complete strength regimen that anyone who wants to start in triathlon has to complement in their lifestyle. So that's very important, right? And then, of course, as injuries come, I always, consider each injury to be a learning phase, right? So whenever an injury happens, you understand that's your body's way of telling that this body part is, not functioning well. And recently as well, one of my plantar was acting up, and that's when I started more exercise on my arch. And now again, that's good, right? And now I'm able to like run even more fast and push even more harder. So that's a learning experience for me. So each time an injury happens, it's a learning opportunity because you get to learn more about that. You unconsciously read about it more, you understand about it more, and then when you talk to more people, you can share experiences. And I think the last part, which is most important here around, is rehabilitation. And I for one, apart from like just racing and doing other sort of activities, I'm like really interested in the history of triathlon as well as injury. So I follow a lot of pros,
Mm.
understanding the kind of setbacks that they have. There's some rich literature that all of these pros leave out, be it social media or their personal blogs. So I try
Mm.
to read about more of those injuries, the more of their lifestyle that causes those sort of injuries, and try to change it within my lifestyle. And then
Right.
during that process, I'm not saying that I always learn from pros, but even
Mm.
in my circle and around, I've learned patience is the best thing. If and triathlon is a good sport. If you've got a leg injury, you can still go out like swimming and cycling. If you've got a
Right.
hip injury, probably you can still swim,
Mm.
right? So either, and if you've got like a shoulder injury, you can still go out and like run or cycle. So
Right.
something or the other is good, or you can just go and do proper strength work. But
Right.
patience is the key. There is no, gung ho-ness in just going out and running reps if your legs or shins are not strong.
Right.
You come back to the gym, work on those, strengthen it up, and then you go run. You'll have more benefits. So I think that's my approach to dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely, critical points there. The patience is so key. When you are injured, when you are anxious to get started again, you're fearful of losing fitness in that particular thing, and if you end up making it worse, further worse, you're going to obviously lose a lot more fitness. So great points there. So what does your typical training cycle look like, say in a week, month, or leading up to a race? How does it look?
Great question. I think the past 1.5 years has put a lot of things into perspective.
Yeah.
but yeah, generally, my training cycle, I generally balance out my days. Like if I've got 7 days a week, I typically train 6 days a week, and then one day I leave totally off,
Right.
just to spend time with my family. And it's a good way to rest and recover as well, right? So, but yeah, on those 6 days, I really balance out between the three disciplines. I try to get in at least 2 swim sessions, and fortunately, I think the amount of time I put in into swim, I'm really strong at the swim. So even if I'm off swimming for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I just get back to the pool, is relatively fine. I can still go and swim a decent pace in a race. So no worries on the swim. Cycling, I generally try to keep it regular, up to like 3 sessions a week. Mostly like shorter indoor sessions, 2 days a week, focusing on say FTP, and that of course depends on what cycle I'm in. But mostly just keeping the FTP steady, some maintenance sessions, and then running again. Like it's 2 to 3 sessions a week, but mostly the running I try to make it efficient by doing brick sessions at least twice a week in the build up to a race, and then of course long sessions. But I've had in this past 1.5 years, I've had like real good cycles in terms of building up individually in each sport. So
Mhm.
I set up some goals in the beginning of last year around improving my FTP and bike gains, and I especially focus only on like say 70.3, which is my key races that I have. And I do shorter distance sprint Olympic, but I've really not gone as far as a full Ironman. So I really focus on like nailing that time down for a 90K bike. And then last year, when I put in a lot of decent work first half of the year till May, I ended up somewhere around I think 2 hours 18 minutes for a 90K bike split. And then I
Wow.
think this year again, yeah. And then this year again with some more work and all, this year again recently, I think just 4 weeks back, I think on first holiday, August 9th, sometime I did the same course again, and that time was down to 2 hours 14 minutes. So now really happy, building up to these sort of goals, which are like individualistic goals, right? While the swim and run happens, I just keep focusing on one aspect so that I build towards it. And likewise on the run, right? My running off the bike was really bad.
Right.
Even when I used to go to races, I know that, I'll be in the front pack in the swim. Bike, somehow I'll manage and be there. But run is where I really start dropping places. And I think 2019 is when I really worked on my run. And in fact, it was a great year that was the year when I actually moved up, a bit on the run. But now I'm
Mhm.
like confident that even off the bike, I can run a good pace and end up with say a 132, 133 half marathon. So that is how I build up my training. And then and building up to a race, right? It's very specific for me.
Mhm.
I do have a coach. I work with him as well. But to me, I really need to understand what element of the sport I'm working on. Like early on in the year, we had a very great opportunity of doing a short swim run and a bike and run. Swim
Mhm.
and run was really short. It was like a 750-meter swim and a 5 kilometer run.
Mhm.
That gets over before you can think of anything.
Right.
My entire January was focused on like hard swim sessions, nothing harder than 1,000 meters, small sessions, 50, 2500s, and then like runs regularly. Then that gave me like, I think 11-minute split on a 750-meter swim. And then the run ended up like somewhere around, I think 18.30 minutes or something. So, I mean, I have those very specific builds for like say 3 or 4 weeks in which I really don't get distracted. I mean, I really don't worry about, getting volume. And then likewise, I had a small bike run race, which was like a 20-kilometer bike and then a 5K run. So that was again focused on like small efforts for 20K bike and then of course running off the bike. So, I mean, I do really focus builds, but I mean, I really miss that aspect of building up for a 70.3. I mean, that's not happened for the past 1.5 years. But those typical cycles, I just go for like say 4 to 6 weeks of build. But I generally maintain the fitness throughout the year, not dropping anything off. But I mean, yeah, definitely working on weaknesses as and when I spot them.
Awesome. That's a great approach to working on individual sports as well as combinations of this running off cycling and the brick kind of sessions as well. So I'm just curious, being a cyclist, and when you mentioned 214 90K, what sort of power are we looking at for that kind of?
So for this side, I actually had a power of, I think around 262 watts was the average power. And I think the normalized was around 268 or something. So it was, yeah, I mean, it was like, it was quite a challenging one, but yeah. It's an achievement that I really like, because I mean, I really like, going on the bike in a race, especially.
Right. And quite smooth too, when you compare, AP to NP, 62 to 68 is
68, yes.
not much of a variation as well. That's really good steady power. That
versus last year, I mean, when I did the same one, my average power was somewhere around 265, and then the NP was 276. So of course, I worked a lot on that, smoothing out the technique, stop the rolling, here left, right, just stay focused on the aero bars. So small gains.
Absolutely. That kind of lack of that too much variation means that you are getting more efficient, so that you can take that whatever savings you can take it into the run. Brilliant.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant. So how does that was training cycles. How do you take care of hydration and nutrition for various distances, like short distance tries versus middle distances till 70.3 that you do regularly?
Yeah, great question. I think, in fact, the last 1.5 years has been a great blessing, because previously, before this, it always used to be like every second month there's a race. So you're really just always building up, and there's no time to think about nutrition. So the past 1.5 years have been a great blessing, because I've really focused on, what sort of nutrition I'm, trying on different distance. In fact, right now I'm practicing a new approach where I'm trying to do like longer bikes of around 150 plus, and then, try running off the bike with, minimal amount of nutrition. But I think one thing that, I need to just make clear over here is that people need to understand that having nutrition when you're cycling or running in a triathlon is not a bad thing. I don't know, somehow, people have this notion in their mind that I will not eat or drink anything on the bike, say, except a banana on a few days. I don't know why people think that. Maybe it's because they don't want to carry it. But I mean, I speak to so many people, and they say that, oh, no, I don't use gels. Oh, no, I don't use carbs. I said, that's fine. I mean, there is no bravado in that. You won't be able to run after that. But I still don't get that. But anyways, probably I'll get it someday. I mean, you can let me know. But yeah, let me talk about my approach, right? So I think initial days, it was quite difficult. And the reason for that is, I mean, I did try out, taking advice of my coaches as well as, other people around me. But nutrition is a very individualistic thing. You really cannot understand what's happening. So I did a few courses on nutrition, also did some certifications, and then tried to understand better as to what works for my body. Understood what each components of sugar, carb, as well as fat have to do with your training cycles. So now for each training cycle, I've got a different sort of diet. When say I'm in a base mode versus when I'm training for a build mode versus when I'm in the taper phase, I generally have different diet plans and try to stick to it. And kudos to my wife for helping out on that. But when it comes to, like, say, the race day, right? I mean, for typically small races right now, I mean, I just stick to a carb drink during the race. Before the race, I just have a gel. And if it's like a small distance, like a sprint or Olympic, I generally have around, say, 750 ml of water with 3 or 4 scoops of carbs. I'm talking about somewhere around 40 to 50 grams of carbs over there, and probably, a gel or two. If it's a sprint distance, probably just one gel. If it's an Olympic, then probably two, one on the bike and say one on the run. And then I slowly moved from like more sugary based gels to now water based gels, because I realized that, they gave me a better output compared to, less bloating as well as going faster. And then for my 70.3 distance, I think that's where I really, made some great breakthroughs. I've switched to a vegan carbohydrate based drink. I don't know if it's available in India. It's called Tailwind, so it's quite
Oh,
popular.
tailwind. Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's very good.
it's
Yeah.
quite so it's quite popular, and I just started trying it out last year. Before that, I was on quite a sugary based drink from Goo and Hi-Fi, which I was thinking is good, but I realized over long distance it was not helping me out. I was getting saturated, so I switched to Tailwind, and now the output is much smoother over. Even the 90K time trial I was talking to you about was just purely based on Tailwind, no gels at all. So I started using that, and using that in a constant form going for the run. So typically, if I'm looking at say 70.3, I would assume around 6 scoops of tailwind on the bike with say probably one or two gels depending on the weather. Really, I mean, in Asian conditions, it's very hot, so you need that extra tread bump. And then probably on the runs, another 2 or 3 gels. And the reason I say so much is because I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", so I mean my weight is also around, like, race weight is around like 75, 76. So I need that amount. It's a big body I'm talking about. It's not a small body.
Right. Yeah.
So I need to vary it, and then I think that's what my plan is. I have to see when the next race comes up how to get to it. And then now what I've done is, since I have time and there are no races in the future, I'm trying to move more towards an approach where I'm looking at fat as a fuel. That does not mean low carb, high fat diet, not at all. But I'm just training my body to go a bit longer and at lower intensities using fat as a fuel. Right? And that I think is going to help me when I do make the switch to Ironman distances. Definitely, because at the lower intensities at the beginning of the race, your body can still utilize fat a bit more, and that's where slowly you start switching over to carbs as a fuel. So trying out that and taking a few modules of that from Endure IQ, so seeing how that goes.
So how are you trying this out? What sort of things are you doing for fat metabolism to get better and stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, fasted workouts is one thing which always like gives benefits to any beginner. Like fasted workouts is for sure, right? But I'm also I'm using fat as a fuel. I'm using this powder called S fuels. So that's like really high on fat. There is no sugar in it at all. So it's like pure fat, and then trying to keep the heart rate really low. And I don't think it will work on the run for me as of now. There are some pros known to do it, but I'm trying to keep my heart rate less than say 125 on the bike to get some sort of benefits from that. And that's really like zone, I think lower zone 3 for me, around, if I'm talking about less than 125. So it's fine. I'm using that in say the first 2 hours of my ride, just using that in the water. And then slowly towards the end of the ride, I'm trying to switch to more carbs, right? And after I do that, when I'm off the bike again, I try to run at a lower heart rate intensity. So it's just been like 3 weeks since I'm trying that out now. But so far good. And I mean, and the reason that I'm liking it is my stomach doesn't feel full. And, I feel more, energetic when I'm off the bike and lighter. But I don't know if it will work in a 70.3. Yeah. But I don't know if it will work in a 70.3, and not giving any wrong hopes to anyone here. Because the 70.3, the intensity is really higher. And if I plan to use fat as a fuel, I probably won't get there. I mean, some others whose heart rate is really low, they might be able to do it. But I mean, for 70.3 or anything lower, I plan to stick to carbs only. But yes, let's test this and adapt the body.
So for this, you are looking at for longer
distance. Yeah, like full Ironmans and all. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So I noticed that you mentioned sticking on the nutrition aspect. I noticed you mentioned that you were looking at different kind of diet during base versus build versus pre-race. So what sort of changes are we talking about? What sort of components are we talking about there?
Yeah, so I mean, not a nutritionist, definitely. I mean, I have to say this, I still like my drinks, so and my pizzas. So that's not going anywhere. Please don't expect those tips from me. But yeah, I mean, definitely when I'm talking about the base phase, right, it's more like high volume. So I try to have, some more carbs in the night, not like too complex, but simple carbs like quinoa or some sort of chapatis in the night, and that helps me in the morning, because then I can do my workouts faster in the morning for up to, like, say, 1.5 hours without any impact. So that keeps me full till my workout is over. But once that base phase is over, and I have a lot of proteins as well in the form of eggs. I mean, I don't have meat, so I depend on lentils and eggs, of course. So that's what happens in the base phase. But when I move to the build phase, right, I really try to have early dinners and lighter dinners, because in the build phase the workouts are at higher intensity. So I generally keep the first 30 minutes on water, but then I really move to some sort of carb drink or some electrolyte, just to ensure that I get benefits of the session, versus finishing that session without eating, drinking anything and saying, hey, I did great. Because I know once I go into office, then I'm going to fall down here and there.
Right.
I need coffee with sugar and all. I totally avoid all of that. So I just want to ensure I get to office fresh and get to work even in the build phase. But then when I'm really coming into the final phase and the taper phase, I try to focus on reducing my body weight over there. And I mean, people have different opinions on that, but for a big guy like me, it really matters a lot. I've tried it personally in 2016-17. I just used to go with whatever weight I had. There was no approach, and I saw the suffering I had in hilly courses in Asia, where the courses is undulating. I saw that suffering. In one race in 2019, specifically in the beginning, I tried that approach of dropping my weight. It felt sluggish in the beginning, but then it really worked for me. I dropped around 4 kilos and reached 75 from around 79, 78. And when the day I raced, I was like around 74.7, I remember, because I measured myself in the hotel. So that was quite a good race. I mean, I felt better. So that's when I realized that for a big guy like me, if I'm going long, it definitely helps if I drop those 2 or 3 kilos. So those time before the taper is the most difficult for me, because in the nights I mostly just have salad, and in the afternoons as well, as I'm trying to have low fat kind of a food. I mean, breakfast I generally just stick to my oats and eggs, so that was not a problem. But yeah, that is the kind of approach I follow. And I mean, I just believe, like, when I'm going into the race, rather than, slapping on carbon wheels or, reducing something on the bike, I'd rather reduce fat on my body. That will give me both benefits, right? And then, of course, I carry less of myself on the run as well.
Right.
Trying to, work with that, but yeah, let's see.
Yeah, that is quite interesting to hear as well, right? Because so what before I get there, what sort of duration are we looking at? So trying to drop that 2-3 kilos during taper.
It's nothing too early. I mean, 3 to 4 weeks, and that naturally happens at the end of a long build. I mean, the last couple of 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, if you're talking about week 5 and 6, I mean, you really have got those long brick sessions and all. So you really don't have to do anything. Naturally, the weight starts dropping. I mean, you just have to ensure you don't load up on those ice creams and then shakes and all that. I mean, just keep the protein intake high and keep the carbs as much as you need to do the workout. And then, no more biryanis and all, but it's okay. It'll come back soon. But just that basic discipline. And it's really frustrating when you're, a working person, because when you're sitting in the office at the cafeteria, people are like, oh God, what are you eating? We just can't see this. And then when you're back home, you're having salad, and then your wife is like, because of you, I can't eat anything else. So that is something, a family man and a working person always needs to keep in mind, balance everything, so that you're not a social outcast anywhere. Other people will be like, we're just not going to invite this guy for lunch. He's going to make us feel bad.
Right. That is a big thing, right? So typically that we kind of say that you need to have that glycogen stores topped up before a race, and there is that carb loading aspect and stuff like that. So does this weight trying to drop weight, does this obstruct that aspect of glycogen stores?
Yeah, so good question. So I think when you're in the last phase of your week, right? I mean, that's where really diet and rest matters, right? And whatever you've done before that to reduce the weight, I mean, is really totally different. And again, I'm not saying, that people have to do this. It's just something that has worked for me and being so that's the reason I'm saying. So I mean, when you're in the last week, right, what you do in the last 72 hours typically before a high intensity 70-20 race is what is carb loading. People should not mistake it as being 1 week before and start eating. You'll just gain more weight before the race, right? And even in those 72 hours, you have to be really focused on what you eat. I mean, I was just seeing another race today where Lionel Sanders said he likes to eat a pizza. I mean, my body can't digest so much of like cheese in the night, right?
Right,
So
right,
probably, I mean, I stick to some typical Indian food like rice, potato, some dal khichdi and all of that 3 days before the race, and that really works for me. And again, in a 70.3 at the intensity we're racing, I think the glycogen is gone by the time it's like say 1.5 hours. After
right,
that, it is all about what you're just topping up on the bike that really sees you through the run. And people
right,
have to understand that, that unless you are like a fat optimized, let's see, your
right,
body is not going to produce anything new. So they have to
right.
understand that and keep consuming enough calories on the bike so that they come out running well.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that. That kind of clears up the stuff. All right. That was great insight about your nutrition, Arjun. So one thing that that uh, uh, athlete like you who is right almost at the top of age groups, right? What are the things that you got to keep in mind going into a race like a 70.3? So what are the things that you would look at and plan so that you are right at the top of your game going into a race?
Yep, excellent question. So I mean, to be honest, at Olympic and sprint, I mean, my only advice to people is that live it, as a training day, but just at a higher intensity, right? I mean, you really don't need that much amount of preparation unless you're a newbie, right? But if you're going for a 70.3 and a full Ironman, I think the preparation level is just like another aspect, right? So like coming to, I think the first aspect, going into 70.3, I think is definitely taking care of your nutrition, and I cannot emphasize that better. I mean, I again, like, I mean, I cannot probably have the best dry suit, but if I don't have the best nutrition, I really would not feel equipped to do the race, right? So I
Hmm.
really ensure that everything is measured out. I've got the right number of gels, I've got the right measure of carbs. And then even 3 days before the race, I try to, reach the venue at least say 2 days before and try to really adapt to the environment, the heat, the weather, what the terrain looks like, and try to take care of my nutrition from the 2 days before. If it's hot 2 days before, I just go out there and start having water and electrolytes from 2 days before, not just wait for one night before the race, right?
Hmm.
And that's in the nutrition aspect. Measure out everything. Have your gels ready, calculate the carbs. If you're not sure how many carbs you need, electrolytes you need, talk to your coach or someone who has done races and they can guide you, right? Just don't say that, I need 2 gels an hour. That won't
Right.
work.
Right.
Then the second thing here that, you need to keep in mind when you're going into say a 70.3 race is, right? Understand the field. Okay. And by saying understand the field, it doesn't mean that you need to know all your competitors. But if you're a regular, like I'm quite a regular in racing in Asia, so I know most of the guys in my age group. So I know that who is strong in what discipline. And if you really want to move up during the race, you need to understand before the race who your competitors are. Ensure that you know where they're parked, what sort of bikes they have.
Right.
That's my mental cue, and it really helps, right? Because when you come to transition, running out of the swim, you're stripping off your swim skin, you see around, you know where you are. You see
Right.
not that many bikes are gone, you're quite happy. So understand the field, but
Right.
that's again only relevant if you're really trying to move places in your age group, right?
Right.
And then again, the third thing that you need to understand is during the day of the race, right? Have a strategy in mind. When you start the swim, don't try to win the race on the swim, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that's where, I mean, people get generally excited, and that's where you lose the most amount of energy, because I mean, no one's form is perfect. I mean, none of us are like perfect in swimming, especially Indians. I mean, except
Hmm.
a very few, right? I mean, we Indians are very bad at swimming, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, you have to be really control yourself, work out the pace and keep asking yourself, can I swim at the same pace for another 2 kilometers every time you feel like surging?
Right.
Find the right feet, draft of them, and once you're out of the water, have a clear mind. And I mean, forget about what happened on the swim once you're out. And for each discipline, once you're out of that discipline, forget about what happened, focus on what's coming next. And once you're on the swim and onto the bike, I think that's when you really need to be focused on the bike, because those 2.5 3 hours, what you eat on the bike will really define what happens after that, right? So don't get carried away by people overtaking you, or you overtaking people. It's good to have an idea as to where you are in the age group by looking around who is moving up or down based on bib numbers or any other cues you can establish. But then towards the end of the race, especially the last half an hour, just focus on getting those calories in, get the water in, and mentally prepare and understand how this day is going to plan out. And I remember when I was racing Bintan in 2019, And I think that's a very hilly course. Whoever has done that would agree. It's around like 800 meters of elevation over 90 kilometers. So it's like a really bad course, and the temperature is like very horrid over there. It's
Right.
early, late 30s in the morning already.
Yeah.
That's when I get on the bike. I really understood that. Okay, fine. I think the bike is over. It's okay. I did a 2:35 split. It's totally fine. Forget about what happened, and then let's focus on the run. And then when I got to the run, I was focusing on watering myself. Keeping myself cool, walking weight stations. And I was surprised. By the end of the first loop, I was already moved up to like say 7th position. And one of my friends told me, hey, you're already in 7th. I was like 12th of the bike. And then by the time the race was over, I think I was already like in say 6th or 5th. And I'm like, okay, fine, this is good, right? Even though I didn't have a great bike, I was
Right.
focused on the run and, moving up. So, these things help in the 70.3 race. But then again, at the end of the day, you need to enjoy the race, right? Don't get too serious about it because, of course, all of us put in a lot of work into it. I think
Right.
enjoyment is foremost. And then, of course,
Right.
depending on what your goals are, it's all, mental game as much as it is physical. You
Right.
can have all the physical stamina you want, but mentally, if you don't play to your strengths, then, it won't be a great day for you.
Right, very important. And when you talked about Bintan, right?
Yeah.
I remember how hot it can get and
Yeah.
crazy because I came to tour of Bintan
Two
for
different
like
time. Okay.
to the Bintan for like 3 times. And
Okay.
every time we start the time trial there in the midday heat, like
Yes.
afternoon 2 and 3. Oh my God, it is that 16 kilometer loop.
Yes.
The course will cover like 160 meters or 180 meters or something like that.
Yes.
It's quite crazy and very,
It's
very windy. Yeah.
it's a difficult terrain for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine. I mean, in that terrain, 230 is quite good, but I know you'll have better targets. But yeah, awesome, awesome. That's great insights again. But talking of hilly courses and 70.3, how was uh, Goa 70.3 for you?
Awesome. Yeah, I was thinking that you'll come back to this question at some point of time. So I think Goa. I think it was quite an exciting race because it was happening in my hometown. But I
Right.
think the interesting part of that is also that it interacts with my life journey as well, because that was the year actually my daughter was born. So in terms of training, I think 2019 was not really that great for me because there was a lot of late nights involved. And I think we in fact celebrated my daughter's first birthday on the day that Ironman Goa got over. The same night we celebrated the first birthday in Goa.
Wow.
After the prize ceremony, we celebrated in the same hood. We celebrated a birthday, so quite a memorable trip for all of us. So I was
Right.
definitely not in the best shape of my life in 2019.
Hmm.
What happened? The interesting story was 2018. Actually, I had raced Bintan and I'd got a world championship slot for France.
Hmm.
But I didn't take it up that time because my daughter was going to be born the same year. So I
Right.
didn't take up the slot. So my aim was that, I'll qualify for 2019 and then, we'll go with my daughter again. So
Right.
2019, my first race for the season was actually Cebu. So,
Mhm.
and then my second race was Bintan. And then I had kept Goa as the last race in case I don't qualify anywhere else, I'll try in Goa.
Mm, mm,
So luckily I went to Cebu, raced well, I qualified over there. So it ended, but then 2 weeks after that was Bintan. So there was no motivation absolutely to do Bintan, but still, nevertheless, I went ahead and did it. And then after that, I went on a Europe trip, had a lot of wine and cheese, got more fat, came back. And then 3 weeks later was Ironman Goa. And I was actually sitting in Singapore and I was thinking that, I'll just go out. I had a few of my friends and my brother doing Goa. So a lot of first timers doing that. I thought I'll just go out over there and support them. I'm not going to really do the race.
mm.
Right. But then that's when my parents told me that, hey, this is the only chance you might get to see you race. I'm like, okay. I was like, okay, then this is it. Then I just had like 3 weeks to cram in whatever preparation I could. And
Right.
it's all on me. I can't say it was anyone else, but it was just 3 weeks of short preparation, then flying down to India, and then imagine traveling with a 10-month-old kid to a race location. Right, it was
Right.
not the easiest, and even I think that the logistics at that place was slightly challenging because.
Mm,
It's the first time in India, right? There are a lot of things that you need to look at, like where the race village is. And other
mm,
places it was quite easy because I mean, these places were hosting the race for like say 7 or 8 years. They had like everything, pick up from the airport to the hotel, the race venue, everything. So here it was like quite,
Right.
difficult. But anyways, we got to it, and the evening before the race day was when actually I felt that this is not going to work out. I had parked. I was actually going to rack my bike in the Goa transition.
Mm.
I left my rear bike wheel in the parking, and then a bike ran over it. I'm like shit, and it was a carbon wheel,
Oh my
and
God.
the skewer broke for the wheel, and the carbon was bent. So I'm like shit. I said this is not happening. This race is not happening. Luckily, my brother's bike was ranked in, so he was fine. But we somehow took it to the race village, and then our friends at Mastermind Bikes managed to remove the skewer. The wheel was still gone for a toss, and then I had to run all over city to find a skewer in India, right,
Mm.
in Goa. I could not find a single skewer for my front bike wheel in the entire Goa. And
Wow.
finally, one shop I found at 10:30, 11 in the night. I got a skewer, racked my bike in the transition. Some organizers helped me out. And then next day morning, I reached the race venue. Somehow I was already so mentally tired with all of this. I'm like, okay, fine. I
Right.
said, let's see what happens.
Running till like late in the night and stuff.
Late in
Yeah.
the night. It was a very jinxed race. I don't know what's happening that I really didn't know. But then
Yeah.
once I reached the start line, right, I saw my family, I saw my parents, my daughter and everyone else from my family cheering me. I was like, okay, fine, let's put on a good show for these people, right? And that's
Mm.
when I just went ahead with the slow. I think the race was superb. I think it's a great experience for first timers. I mean, personally, if I come to the course, it is a challenging course. I mean, I would not really be fooled by the map and say that it's an easy course, because when I looked up the map online, it felt straightforward. It
Right.
was anything but straightforward, because the swim was like really, shallow waters, jellyfish stings all over. I also got a sting on my leg, and
Right.
people using glasses and walking. Oh my God, it was a chaotic start on the swim. And
Mm.
then running to the transition was an experience. It was almost like an 800-meter jog to the transition. And then I
Right.
think the bike course was fantastic. Good work by organizers in closing all of that, stretches and all. I mean,
Mm.
good support on the bike course. But then again, I think on the run course, it was narrow and getting too hot and all. The course was great. Probably if I was in better form, I could have put up a better show. But I came out with a positive experience because my family was there. And then, I mean, the amount of people, I mean, I was surprised. There were a lot of people in the race who actually knew me by name. I was like surprised. And
Right.
so even before the race and after the race and even during the race, people were chatting with me, taking photos. And then I made a lot of new friends over there. So it was a
Right.
good experience coming to India and racing, because these are all people who I used to chat with on Facebook and all. But it was a
Right.
good experience, and I mean, yeah, I enjoyed the race thoroughly. And I
Yeah.
mean, on the run, especially on the second loop, I was not bothered about my timing. I was trying to cheer a lot of these guys who were struggling ahead of me. I
Mm.
personally remember giving my salt tablets to one guy who was like really cramping bad. And then
Right.
I had like few extra gels. I gave those gels to like two other people. I mean, it was an enjoyable course.
Right.
I had
But
like
you
good
still
memories over there.
you still managed second in the age group or something like that.
Yeah. So managed second in my age group. There was this one guy, I think it was a Britain guy who overtook me, I think the last 5 kilometers or something. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have it in me to catch him that day, but yeah, second in age group and I think eighth overall. So it was a good race, memorable
Nice.
for sure. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, awesome. So, since you mentioned the race in Cebu that you qualified for World Championships in 2019, how was that experience? How did that go?
Yeah. So I think races, I mean, outside of I think India are really competitive, right? I mean, I have to say
Mm.
that. So definitely, I think you really need to bring your game up if you really want to race in any race outside of India. I mean, because here the timings are like really insane, right? And the
Mm.
field is like world class. If you're talking about Cebu, right?
Mm.
There were like people who were coming up all the way from Australia, Great Britain, and all the place, Singapore, Hong Kong, and all. And that was, I think, one of the first qualifying races in the season for Top 4 2020. So there's a big rush. And then Cebu is one of the most famous races in Asia for 70.3. It's one of the better known races. So there
Mm.
were about like I think 1100, 1200 odd guys over there. Quite
Mm.
a big race, quite a great race. I think going into the race, my strategy was simple. I need to be somehow in the top 10, because I had a good understanding that there will be at least some 6 or 7 slots in my age group. So if I'm there in that top 10 somehow, I will make the cut. That was my main aim. Otherwise, I think 2 weeks later there was Bintan, but my heart was set on finishing it over
Mm.
there. So
Mm.
again, a great experience. I mean, great setup. I think the event was perfect. I think to start with, I think the swim was a little rough. There was like a storm the day before, and there were talks in the night that they'll probably make it a duathlon and not make it a triathlon actually.
Wow.
but somehow the storm subside. That is what they said, they subside, but the waves were still crazy. But
Right.
somehow got through the swim, no issues on the swim as such. Got onto the bike, heavily windy course and like very hot. Again, as I mentioned to you, right, my nutrition was not dialed back in then.
Mhm.
I realized now that I was relying more on sugars than a pure carb plus electrolyte kind of a model.
Right.
So I mean, the first half of the bike was a breeze, no problems. But second half was when I started really feeling the pain. But somehow managed it on the run. But I think the run first loop again, first 10K was good, but second 10K was just a matter of staying in there and staying aware. So I was
Mhm.
really pushing hard, ensuring that I get through the line, make it there, and ultimately, I mean, looking at the splits and all, I think I just made it into the top 10. I made,
Okay.
I think, around ninth position or something.
Mhm.
And then I think they had like, luckily they had around 11 slots for my age group because we
Right.
had around like 170 people lot. So I was still safe,
Right.
got the slot and came out, right? But yeah, I mean, quite an enjoyable experience. It was a flat course for sure on the bike, but coming back, I think today, if I go there, I think it will be a more stronger performance for me because I
Yeah.
think over the past 2 years, I've really worked on, ironing out the deficiencies on the bike, especially.
Right.
So, great race.
Awesome. Awesome. So how what now you have improved quite a bit, but till the events have happened, what was your best 70.3 time till now?
I think funnily, I think it was in Bintan, and
Yeah.
that was just right after the Cebu race, 2 weeks, when you didn't have any pressure, you were zero motivated to race. I went there and I think I did a 501 something. And
Okay.
that's really good for the course because the guy who won the course that year in my age group did like some 448 or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was also like, I mean, I gave up in the last 2 kilometers. I'm like, this is too damn hot. Otherwise, I mean, I could have done a sub 5 that day.
Right.
But again, this rookie mistakes, right? So I was wearing this model of the Garmin, right? So
Mhm.
on the bike, I think by mistake while switching the gears, this button got pressed, and then my overall time got lost. So when I
Okay.
started the run, I had to start the run as a new activity. So I had no
Right.
clue while on the run that whether I was sub 5 or whether I was like this side of 5, that side of 5. So I
Right.
was just, trying to make maths, and somewhere down that maths went wrong. Probably I
Right.
screwed up transition time and all. Otherwise, I could have gone sub 5. And that's
Right.
ironic because that is one of the toughest sports that people hate, right?
Right.
I'm like, oh shit, this is a good one to like really miss it. But it was quite a memorable year because there were some few guys from the army that year in Bintan, Indian Army. So I
Mm.
think one of those guys actually came third overall or something. And then
Right.
there was, I think, one more guy who did 458. So it was quite a good day that day for Indians. So yeah,
Awesome.
but probably
Great.
now I think, yeah, I mean, if I go back, definitely, I'll target somewhere around like 442 or 445 maybe. But let's see.
I'm sure you will be easily be somewhere there, 430 to
Hope
440
so.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So what are the most memorable races so far? Which one is the most memorable race so far for you?
So I think Goa one is definitely the most memorable. I think you have to just give it to the crowd. They were so enthusiastic. I mean, of course, I knew people and friends, but even people were just standing on the street supporting everyone. I think that was a fantastic race. And then again, of course, I mean, you can't beat Cebu. I think some of these races in Philippines are like world class in terms of organization. The kind of level of detail that they put into everything. Those
Right.
are quite memorable. And I think in terms of performance for me, I think Bintan will always be memorable for me. I
Hmm.
think not just because of the 2019 days, but I've gone there almost 3 times now. And
Right.
each time I've gone at a different stage of my triathlon journey. I think the first time I went was in 2017. Oh, I suffered like crazy. And
Right.
I went there, I was so vain. I didn't know any, and I didn't have enough knowledge. I just went there. I thought this is easy. I'm going to do like 5:10 today.
Right.
So I ended up doing like 6:18. Right?
Right.
So that was the amount of vainness I carried into my first triathlon. And I was thinking, this is just, nothing. This will
Yeah.
basically pass. So it did not pass. It was suffering. And
Right.
then the second time I went again, that was the time in my career and life when I was just starting to get serious about triathlons.
Hmm.
So I went there, I came back home very disappointed that day, that I couldn't run off the bike and I cramped up again. I was not so strong at the bike. And then the
Right.
third time I went, that was the time I went, when I had no pressure at all. I just went to the race thinking that, it's just 2 weeks after Cebu, I have no pressure to do any performance today. And that was my best race. And now I'm
Right.
excited to, go back there and, win my age group and come back. So I think that will
Yeah.
be a most memorable race for me. And the reason it's also memorable is that there are different elements to that course which really makes a thinking athlete like me,
Mm,
perform to their best. It's not a straightforward course where you just go swim, bike, and run. The swim
right.
is flat. You have to pace yourself, and when you're on the bike, again you have to pace yourself up and down. And then when
Mm,
you're on the run, you have to manage the heat, right? So that course is built for thinking athletes like me, right?
right.
There are some who just go out, but some who think and build up on each element of the race. So that's where I feel my strength is.
Awesome, awesome. It's a bit with up and down. It's also a little, curvy and all
Oh
that,
yeah,
right?
windy. Yes,
Why
yes, yes.
it's
There are a lot of hills and
quite
roads. It's the
windy.
same course as to Bintan, almost same course, except I think 20 kilometers in between.
Right, right. Brilliant, man. That's great. So, who inspire you? Who are the favorite personalities in sports or otherwise that inspire you?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, right? I mean, as a kid, I think yeah, all of us were cricket fans. But over a period of time, after life started, career started, we got a real good awareness thanks to internet about other sports and other people that really exist, right?
Right,
So
right,
I think, and to be honest, quite past 3 years, I have not three, but really 4 years, I just follow triathlons. I don't follow any other sport. I mean, I've seen the Olympics and all, quite aware what's happening in the swimming, running world, but I'm
right.
really keen on following the pros in our sport and all. So
Mm,
definitely, I think some good professionals right now in the triathlon field that really inspire me. I think Lionel Sanders is great, to understand how he got himself up. But then it's also encouraging to see young people like Sam Long, coming up fast, and there's Woody Bonberg. And I mean, all of them have got like really good life stories that you can learn from. Of course, I'm not at that stage. I'm at like say around 35 now, so I don't see myself going anywhere near them. But at least it's like good inspiration of the way that I want to shape my daughter's life, or
right.
rather, I say force her life. but yeah, I mean, those are people I enjoy, following, and then of course, there are a lot of other pros that cause the respect to come out. I mean, each race and each of these people are really working hard to put on a show. It's inspiring. To say that
Right.
anyone inspires me more than anyone else would be not a fair game. But I think, yeah, in real life, I think there are a lot of people in Singapore, who have done like multiple. I mean, Ironman is an understatement. There are people like in the same year they have done a Kona, then they've done Norseman, and then I think one more. I think the Ultraman in the same year. So they're like crazy people out here in Singapore.
Right.
But I think from the Indian fraternity, definitely, I think all of us look up to Subramani
Yeah.
Venkatesh. I think
Right.
definitely good learnings from him, great inspiring story. And
Yeah.
then I think definitely within my age group, I think I'm not in my age group, but like some of the people who are coming like Sujay and Rajendra Bhaskar, I
Right.
definitely look up, to their stories and how they're coming up. I mean, these are the guys who will, come forward in the next 4 5 years and win races. And people
Yeah.
like me are going to be like 40s, and then our story will be over. but yeah,
No,
but yeah,
no,
look
but
forward to those stories.
yeah, but definitely you are going to be, you guys are going to be nurturing the next generation, right? With your experience and guidance, yeah, will definitely come in handy for the future generations, or not necessarily the young lot, but whoever is looking for
Yup, yup.
guidance in the triathlon area, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes. The next set of
excellent.
age groupers.
Yeah, yeah. So great, man. This has been a fantastic chat. But to kind of conclude this session, what are some of the tips you would give working athletes to do well in sport while doing well at work and family lives?
Yeah, so I think some of the tips here are covered, like so focus, right? I mean, whatever you do, focus on that aspect. And I mean, I'm sure that everyone's as committed to the professional life as triathlon as a hobby. So focus on each aspect, and whatever you're doing, be in the moment for that. If you're doing a say a session, be in the moment for the session. Don't think about what's going to happen at work later. When you're in work, don't get distracted. Do work, right? Second part is patience, right? Be patient. Speed will come, endurance will come. You just need to be patient and keep working on the basics. And of course, the third part is, when you're out there to race, I mean, all of us are, I mean, to be honest, doing training to actually race, right? So
Right,
what's the point if you're out for a race and you don't enjoy it, right?
right.
So really, enjoy it, whether you're out there to compete or complete, enjoy it so that, you live the experience, right? I think, yeah, that's the only three tips.
Awesome. Yeah, this has been fantastic, Arjun. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your experience and knowledge with the Working Athlete podcast. I really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Venki. It's a great conversation, and really appreciate you putting together the series for the Indian community. Thanks a lot.